Yeah, some hip hop jingle. Cool. Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Walking Digital Corridors with myself, Alex Abbott, the bearded sales guy, and
Jordan Abbott, the sales poet. You're on mute, gents.
Start the day off right. No, Jensen Abbott, BDR at content.ai.
Brilliant. Welcome, boys. So this morning we are talking about how is your digital twin used to build trust with your network. So I think this is going to be an interesting conversation because we often kind of talk about this notion of having a digital twin in relation to the work that we do in sales, in B2B sales, where we're trying to develop our personal brands and use social media platforms effectively, kind of replicating ourselves on social media. But in order to kind of get the conversation going, I wanted to pose a few questions to you boys, because you're kind of there working on the coal face. And so what is a digital twin and how should one view their digital twin? Jordan?
Yeah, good question. A bit of a loaded question. I think it's, I think as closely as possible, it needs to represent you. Of course, not. It's a bit of a balancing act because it is your whole self. When you're thinking about your digital twin on LinkedIn, for example, you're not gonna share intimate details of your life, like your last bowel movement or your what you had for lunch. Not that you would on other socials, but it's I think you've got to think of it as a way of mirroring yourself on social and a way, or digital, should I say, and a way to sort of build your visibility. I can't remember what the latest figure is for the number of LinkedIn users. I think
a billion.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought I saw a billion floating around. Obviously, between 1% and 3% of those are actually posting, but there's a lot of people that are active users. I think it was around 17, 18% that are consuming content. So it's a great way to build your visibility.
Just to jump in there as well. Sorry, I'm so used to Teams where I can raise a hand that I'm actually raising my actual hand. No, great point, Jordan. I think to add to that as well, right, is I think you said it was kind of 1 in 3 posting, but it'd be interesting to find out actually of how many are posting content that kind of is authentic in themselves, and it's not just maybe a repost or a company repost or something like that, right? Where they've actually maybe copied someone's article and just posted it themselves to share it. So it'd be interesting to actually see this split in the content.
It's a really good point. So it's 1% that post. But yeah, as you said, how many of those are actually creating the content themselves rather than just, taking something out of their advocacy tool and putting it on LinkedIn? Yeah, that is a really good point.
And when we think about the topic for today, digital twin, how many people that post are actually behaving in a way that they would in real life?
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, when we first started, or when I first started out, it felt really unnatural. And I think that's because I felt like I had to fit this sort of corporate mold. So what I was posting wasn't very engaging. It didn't really represent me and my beliefs and my passions. It was just I was doing it because I felt that that's what I should do.
And it's not just about posting, but before we go there, and we often talk about LinkedIn, but which platform should we be considering when we are creating our digital twin? Now, let's, before you answer that, let's just kind of frame the fact that, certainly from my perspective, this notion of creating a digital twin is a true reflection of you, but digitally.
Yeah.
So, Matt Dixon and the Jolt effect, his latest research that kind of allowed him to then create the Jolt method. He talks about the importance of personal brand. He talks about the importance of personal recommendations in sales, and high performers are salespeople that do provide those personal recommendations. But in order to be credible, in order for those personal recommendations to land and your buyers to listen to you, you have to be credible and trustworthy. And in a world where we can't always be in person, meeting our buyers, our customers, in a world where we struggle to penetrate the zone of resistance, in a world where, we really need to scale our outreach in a human, authentic, and genuine way, creating one's digital twin, I think, is incredibly important. And so where do we create those digital twins? Not that we want multiple personalities, but where, there are multiple platforms, which platform should we create our digital twin on if we're in a B2B sales environment?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things there. I think there needs to be a distinction between digital twin and personal brand. And the reason I say that is because I think your personal brand, that's something that spans both the digital and physical. That's you, that's the way you engage with people, that's how you interact at events, that's how you are perceived in meetings and all the other things. So that's what encompasses your personal brand. And I think your digital twin is part of that personal brand. And on that point, I think it's crucial to consider that not all socials are created equally, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of social platforms out there and a lot of platforms that you can use to enhance your personal brand and build your visibility. And
engage with your audience.
Engage with your network. But I think it can be overwhelming. So really what you need to focus on is, where is my audience? Who do I want to engage with? Where are they? And then be present there and engage on those platforms. So I think that's the real determining factor.
Yeah. There's this idea of outbound, inbound, and nearbound. I think it's, we've often talked about the traditional sales funnel being obsolete, somewhat broken when you think about conversion rates today. And so, it's hard not to think about, for me, where some of these social platforms that I use, where they might fit within a traditional sales funnel. But almost flipping that funnel on its head, where do those social platforms fit when, I think about, me, each of you needing to amplify yourselves into your networks, into your target audience, going from visibility right through to more in-depth conversation, meaningful relationship. Do you kind of see the digital platforms sitting somewhere within that upturned funnel, or do you see it slightly differently? Jensen, what's your view on that?
Great question.
Or do you spend all your time on LinkedIn and you don't care about other digital platforms?
No, look, I think it's a great question, and I mean, me personally, I spend a lot of time in LinkedIn, but I think like I had a conversation, and obviously won't name drop anyone, but I had a conversation with someone actually the last week about how they can actually utilize YouTube to create like YouTube shorts about the company, maybe about the product, like 10 to 30-second short videos that people can consume easily. And then it kind of turned into a bit of a brainstorming session, coming up with a kind of a name for the channel, that sort of thing, and actually helping motivate that person to kind of think of these ideas. And then it got me thinking of actually, wow, how can we actually then kind of teamwork to actually try and capture more people to then reach out, start conversations. So no, great question. I mean, in all honesty, I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, and I know that I should harness other channels, or maximize my opportunity within other channels, and that's one thing that I need to do.
What about, because I really hate calling social platforms channels. I think about social media platforms being places. Just like when we go to an event, there might be a networking environment. I mean, there might be, it's the event itself, then you've got a networking environment, you've got a conference hall, then you've got like a present, there's a presentation going on. These are all different places where you have an opportunity to meet people that you might want to engage in conversation with and potentially do business with. And so, I do try and think about LinkedIn as a place. All right, it's a big place, but there's so many different rooms within that place that you can go and venture into and have conversations in. The same for Twitter.
And I think that now that you mention it like that, it kind of is where, right, I can make the connection now. And it's like, actually, now that you've explained it like that, it makes a lot more sense to me, right? And actually being, for the fact that I've also been to events and felt it, I kind of now understand what you mean with LinkedIn. It's having many different rooms, many different opportunities to insert yourself into networking opportunities, have conversations, that sort of thing. But no, yeah, I think that's a great point. And definitely you mentioned Twitter. Again, it's I made a Twitter account and actually kind of fell off the face of the earth for a bit on Twitter. But actually I then started to go back through Twitter and actually follow and have a look at some people that are within the same industry as me. And I actually found I got a little bit lost then just reading some tweets right around CMS and that sort of thing. And then I actually found I got lost because obviously within Twitter, you've kind of got like the different threads, or X, shall we call it? X, sorry. You've got all the different threads. So I found myself kind of clicking on one thread and then another, and it all being linked. And all of a sudden, I've taken this maze kind of to land me on a piece of content.
Yeah. Well, you touch on an interesting point there, I think, and again, trying to anchor down on this notion of having a digital twin. I think if one, let's say, has developed their social profiles so that it represents them, a true representation of them, but is the authentic, genuine them, not the I'm a sales machine and I'm like a dog with a bone, I never let my buyer go, which I think some salespeople are at the risk of doing inadvertently, the way they talk about themselves and use social profiles as a CV. But actually, you touch on a good point there, Jensen, where you can get lost in the maze of social, which is why I think we need a methodology. And for us and our digital, we follow a series of steps systematically, going into the rooms within each social platform with purpose, knowing what we're going to do in each of those areas so that we can trust in that process and ultimately take steps towards achieving our objectives, which is usually, certainly for me, and I know for you too, is creating conversations with your target audience. But on that point, Jordan, what do you find works particularly well for you in that regard?
In relation to creating conversations?
With regards to maintaining focus as you're walking through these digital corridors of social media where your network guides.
Yeah, I mean, just to echo your point, I think it's really crucial to have an objective, to have a direction, to have something that can keep you true and honest and not just scrolling through. So, I set myself objectives of, okay, how many comments do I want to drop? How many pieces of engagements do I want to make? How many posts do I want to react to? How many XYZ? I think it just sort of keeps me honest.
I was just going to then add in. So then, obviously, then I'm guessing you then can see week after week that per kind of the amount of actions you do influences the conversations that you have, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think, can we stop switching?
Getting a bit dizzy, motion sickness.
Sorry, I'm just carried away playing around with the views.
I noticed.
Yeah, I would never be a cameraman, I don't think.
No. Was that the ADHD kicking in? Just
I don't know. I didn't know I had it, Jordan.
I've lost my train of thought. I think, setting those objectives and then measuring or reporting religiously, just to ensure that you can identify any trends that are taking place. I noticed a little while back I wasn't getting as many calls. And as I look back at the data, the one difference in my behaviours was I wasn't making as many comments on other people's posts. So that was the trend. That was what the data told me. So then I ensured that I spent more time making comments.
Yeah, that's good. It's a good point. So having the tools, having the data, measuring those things that really matter to hold yourself accountable for doing those things. And it really is important to insert yourself into as many conversations as possible on social media, because it's those conversations, those digital conversations, that increase your chances of turning them into real life conversations on a call like this or in person. So I'm conscious of time. Let's wrap things up for this week. I think it's been an interesting conversation. Are there any takeaways that each of you, or give me one takeaway for anyone considering creating their digital twin? What should they be considering, and what can they implement today that would have a positive effect on generating conversations with their target audience?
I've got one, and it's to do with the digital twin and does it represent you? Now, when doing a post, and if you want that post to be more genuine, I actually recommend in speaking into your phone and having that kind of as your post, right? So it's actually coming from you yourself. Because I know recently I've seen a lot of posts that is very kind of corporate driven, or it's big words and all fancy jargon. Actually, your prospect isn't going to read. They just want your viewpoint. They want your kind of your own judgment. They want to know from you yourself. So give it a go. Speak into your phone for a post and see how that turns out.
Yeah, it's authentic that way, right?
Exactly that.
Cool. Jordan?
I think the best bit of advice is what is it? How do you eat an elephant? One piece at a time. It really doesn't have to be an overwhelming process. It is on face value, right? But start with just taking one step, whether it be updating your tagline or changing your cover image, or as you said, just recording a quick video that's really authentic. It's an iterative process, and it's not a one-stop shop, one-time thing. You've done it and then you close that book. It's a constantly changing, evolving thing, as we are as people, right? It's a representation of us. So just break it down, one thing a day if you can, and don't beat yourself up, because we're not always going to get it right. Try things out and optimize from there.
That reminds me of, is it the horse, the fox? I can't remember the name of the book.
What's the fox, the mole? Oh, what?
But it was the boy says to the horse, he was like, I can't see where I'm going. And the horse said, can you see one step in front? And the boy said, yes. So the horse turned around and said, just keep taking one step, keep putting one foot in front of the other. But yeah.
Yeah. Nice. And mine would be, think about your social profile as if you were having an in-person conversation with someone. When you're having that in-person conversation, would you talk about how great you are and throw a brochure in their face? Or would you have this sort of more genuine, authentic conversation that kind of tells them a little bit about you in a natural and authentic way? And I think that if you do that on social media, on your LinkedIn profile, your Twitter profile, any other profiles that you might have digitally, it will encourage your audience to read on and want to learn a bit more about you, and that will increase your chances of having a conversation with them, which is ultimately what you want if you're in B2B sales or any sales role. Cool. With that, that brings us to a close for this week's episode of Walking Digital Corridors. If you're available tomorrow at 1 p.m. UK time, we are having our first ever F1 live banter session. We're F1 fans, in case anyone didn't know that, and me calling Jordan after the Jordan Racing Team and Jensen after Jensen Button might kind of be a bit of a tell. Their younger brother,
The dude was going to be called Lewis, but that would break the day theme, right? Could have called him Jacques after Jacques Villeneuve.
Jacques or Jacques? Or is that the French pronunciation? Is that the French in you there, Jordan?
Yeah, I may have been butchering it, but
cool. Anyway, if you are around at 1 p.m. tomorrow UK time, we look forward to seeing you. Otherwise, we'll see you next week on Walking Digital Corridors. Take care all.